So we can call the meeting to order. And there's no public items, I don't think. There's no public here, so have you all had a chance to look at the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are passed, and so now we're going to be discussing the triaxial cylindrical field.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, did I not include that in the packet? I don't know how to do this.
So you heard back from them?
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to pull
Oh, yeah,
the memo
sure.
here. So the work was started. I had a staff memo. I must have missed including it.
It was in there.
It was
It's
in
there.
Oh, there.
It's
Okay.
after the budget page. Yeah.
So the work has started. The contractor arrived last Monday who was doing the garnet blasting, and they completed that. As they were doing that, they discovered there were actually 3 holes in the sculpture that we weren't aware of, and that weren't identified in the condition assessment either. So I don't know if they were new or not, but either way, those will need to be repaired before we can reinstall it, of course. So Dave did some pricing out for it's a special type of weld that needs to be done to repair these holes. So I was actually able to just get cost estimates back from him today, and he thinks it'll be around $1,000. I would err on the side of a little bit more than that, just because we also don't know if additional garnet blasting would need to be done after that welding occurs. He doesn't think so, but you never know. These projects always seem to create surprises. So wanted to just run that by you, since it would be a higher project cost than what you had originally approved, which was $10,000. We would want to take some of what we have with our remaining budget funds and probably at least set the $1,000 aside, which is what he thinks the welding it will cost. And then they would complete the welds, do kind of the spot garnet blasting if they need to, and then would eventually relocate it. I think they've poured the new pad, it looks great. So the Public Works Department has been helping with that. They've been a huge help. It looks really nice. It's not just like your basic concrete pad. They took a few steps up. So that looks great. If you've gone out and seen the sculpture itself, it looks a little funky, I guess, at this stage. When it was first done, it looked great, and then I went like the next day, and it was like a bright orange color, which was exciting to see. And apparently that was that's the rust process starting. So over the next few weeks to months, don't really know how that will look. It should eventually kind of get back to that patina that you are used to seeing. Lauren, you probably know about this more than I do. So Dave has suggested if we can have our staff go out to pressure wash it, that might help provide a more uniform appearance in the meantime. And then I thought maybe we could print up some signage just to have out there so people kind of know, like, hey, this is going on. It's good to communicate and tell that story of taking care of our art. And then also, if they're just surprised by what it looks like, then that can communicate that. So that's kind of the project update. The extra budget cost would be something you need to vote on today. I understand you want to look at the public art matching grant applications as well. So if you prefer to discuss both and then make your motions to approve, we can certainly do it that way.
I think that would be really helpful because we have, flexibility with this project regarding if it's this year's budget or next year's budget. So,
Okay.
but I do love the idea of the signage. I think that's really important for people to understand the magnitude of what the city does to keep art in the community. So, taking care of it.
For sure. Yes, we can do that. I think that will cost something, but probably
Yes.
a couple $100, not too much. Yeah.
Well, a couple $100.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. So should we,
Were there questions about this before we moved on? Anyone? Good.
no questions? So should we talk about the additional 2026 Public Art Matching Grant Awards now? And I don't know if you all got a chance to look through to see. So are we thinking of further funding the Homage to Public Access and the Open Air Media Festival? Those seem like they were in the red. Is that what that is meaning?
Let me see.
Isn't the opposite?
I think it's the opposite. Yeah, the red. Yeah, it's probably misleading. But
Okay.
the red are funds projects that actually came under funding.
Right, they came under funding, so they're the ones we're thinking of increasing funding for?
Well, like the Riverfront Crossings mural and the Moongate, they ended up costing higher than what the total
Oh.
project cost was.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I guess you're right. I was looking at that opposite.
So, like Homage to Public Access, they reduced their project funding, or they reduced their kind of project scope a little bit, which reduced their budget after they saw our funding award because they knew they couldn't quite do everything with what they had. And then the Open Air Media Festival, I got a response back from Zen, but there was no reported change in like the scope or the budget. I did actually get a reimbursement request for that one as well. Yeah.
Okay. So we did, can we fund over $4,000?
How much do we go left? Yeah.
We have do we have 8,000?
There's about 8,000 remaining in the budget, and that would not include anything for the field piece.
And the total cost of the field piece, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
The total project budget that was previously approved was 10,000. The extra work estimate was at least 1,000.
Got it.
And so with signage and just the way, we're thinking like maybe 15 would be, if
Yeah.
the signage is
Set aside,
200, and then
yeah.
we'd want a little cushion
Right.
on that. So, and so, so basically what we're thinking about here is to offer further funds to, let me see. Well, the corridor ensemble. Let's talk, should we talk about
No,
them
it would
in
be the top
order?
two, right, that we would be looking for. They're the ones asking for the additional funding would be the top two, the mural and then the Moongate.
Front crossing and Lunar Horizon.
Riverfront Crossing mural and then the Lunar Horizon Moongate are the two that went over their budgets.
Okay.
So that would be about half of the remaining money, a little bit more. And we would then, if we funded those, we would split the cost for the hemicylindrical field piece across two annual budgets. Is that what we're thinking of
Well, no,
doing?
we've already incurred, we only need 1,200 for that. We've
We've already approved the
approved,
10,000
the
for that.
10,000 is
yeah.
already approved.
So we have more
We have more money
Yeah, than we
can,
need.
yeah,
So,
right?
so your thought, Anita, was that Homage to Public Access and the Open Air Media Festival, they're scaling back in order to fit our grant. But have these things happened yet? They're for next year, right? Like,
This one's
Open
completed,
air's
but this one's underway, the public.
It's
space
probably
one.
too late
It's probably too late to
I
do
would
it,
think.
okay.
Yeah.
well, let's fund these guys, right?
Yeah.
And then put the rest into hemicylindrical field? I'm not voting
Or just
on-
put,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we'll need to put more than 1,500 into.
I don't want to give any money back to the city. I'm going to be on public access saying this, but it's just like if it's been allocated for the arts, I want it like all to go
Right.
to artists if
And-
we can
and-
get it to artists.
Right, and it
Yeah.
was that meeting being interrupted that we didn't get to this point of
Right.
discussion, which is unfortunate, but, so we can go ahead and approve, or, we'll have to vote, but on the Riverfront Crossing mural, as well as so again, I come back to, can we fund over $4,000? Because we gave both of those groups $4,000. And that's what we say.
I see what your question is.
So then we gave 3,000 to Homage to Public Access, So did they scaled it back to,
They scaled it back, yeah,
I think it's too late to consider the ones that are
underway or completed.
already done or completed if they didn't ask for additional funding. I think it's too late to ask and to reconsider those.
Okay. Is there anything that's upcoming on this list?
they all seem underway or completed.
There were 9.
But I think, well, what did you find out? Because we wanted to know, could they hand in more receipts?
So I can just kind of go through what I heard back from each of them. The Riverfront Crossings mural, yeah, that project came, the artist ended up reducing their own payment. Basically, the painting took longer, and then they also were anticipating having the paint donated, and they weren't able to do that. So to make it work, the artist just reduced their stipend. The Lunar Horizon Moongate project is also underway. They're working on fabrication of that and have done some site prep. Something that was unanticipated was they didn't account for the transportation, delivery, and placement costs of the big limestone blocks that are kind of on either end of that archway. So that was where that extra $1,500,000 is coming from. Homage to Public Access, they reported that they completed the event portion. They're now working on kind of the archive videos. They reported that there was, I don't have it here, I think it was like $750,000 in the archival storage costs that they would still benefit from if there was additional funding. But then the remaining of that was just a reduced budget. The Open Air Media Festival was completed. Like I said, I didn't get much back in terms of like whether there was a change in scope or budget. The reimbursement documentation I did get was fairly sparse. I think it's just going to the planners mostly.
Okay.
The Corridor Ensemble project didn't report anything major. They did share that they were adding more rehearsals and an additional performance, but they didn't share if that was located in Iowa City, so I'm not sure if that was, we had some discussion about those being public access within city limits, and they didn't provide that information. We funded the dance performance at its full ask. I didn't hear back from Poetry Al Fresco, but we also funded that one at its full ask. Family Folk Machine project was completed, and I hadn't heard back from them. Didn't hear back from Fakers Club. Iowa Nice, they are working on that project. They have started photography for it. They're still looking for funding to do an installation at the Iowa City Latino Festival. And then Toxic Verticality, we did not fund them, and they did not say, they responded, but just said there would be no changes from their original application if we were to consider it.
And so with that in mind, can we offer more than $4,000 for any of these existing projects? Could we come back and say, can we add the $5 to this person's per hour fee? Can we, could we give an extra $1,000 to the Homage to Public Access, which is what they asked for video editing and the archival storage costs? So can we do those things? Is that within our?
The $4,000 is a guideline, like a maximum amount that you all establish through your guidelines that you adopt each year. So I think you can do it. I would, and if you want to do it in this case, we can make it happen. I would just caution you to do that frequently. Or in the future, as when people do apply, they're basing their projects and their applications based on that maximum that you've set out. So we want to make sure that whatever we are communicating to the public, they understand when they apply, this is, what I can get out of it. This is the scope of a project. Perhaps there were people who didn't apply because they didn't think they could get more than 4 or something like that. So while you can do it, I don't think it's probably a best practice. But in this case, yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah, I agree it's not, but I think it was just a strange meeting that we had to quit really fast. What, is there something? Oh, okay. So Did the Riverfront Crossing mural, did Sarah give you an idea of her hours?
She based her, she did not give it, she said it took a week and a half extra. Her payment was not based on hours, it was based on square footage. So she wasn't able to tell us exactly how many more hours and what that loss was, but
So what would that be if we gave her an additional $5 per square foot?
I think this $3,200 is the value of her extra time and the paint that was not donated.
Isn't it that she scaled back her payment because she had to pay for the paint?
Yeah.
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 So,
And because it took longer.
right,
Yeah.
right. So she was really making up for the paint not being donated, is what I understood.
So we could, it depends on how you all want to frame it, but you could say something unusual happened and we wound up with extra money. This is not something that will probably ever happen again. But as a one-off, we have extra funding to provide for recipients of grants. And, that would be the $3,200 difference for the Riverfront Crossing mural, the $1,500 difference for the Lunar Horizon Moongate. And then we could even go down to some of the projects that were not funded. Or were they funded? These all received some funding, yeah. So we could do,
These,
But part of the criteria, though, is that it's a 50-50 match, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
was just
Right.
trying
So,
to
I mean,
calculate that.
we're starting to.
Yeah, they have to stay within
Right,
that.
we're starting to, like, kind of get outside the bounds in two different situations, right? Over to the max award, plus if you give them the 3,200, it's going to be over to the 50-50 cost share.
got it.
so with this one, 4-8, we could award $900 for
Got it.
Riverfront Crossing murals.
I'd feel better about that than 30.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't really, until they have to be able to do the match, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's all, their grant agreements are all subject to the lesser of, so our maximum award or 50% of the total project cost.
So the Iowa Nice is still in progress there, and we didn't fund that, I believe. And that would give an opportunity for another artist to get something going, to actually get something, and it's in the, very community based there. So I think it'd be nice to give them some money to
Yeah.
help them along their way.
I agree with that.
I'm much more comfortable with that one than the toxic verticality. That one, I always, even when we were reviewing it, it felt like it would have to go through safety and legal panels to be able to fund. Just it's an aerial project and.
But if we add funding to a project that hasn't been funded yet, what kind of timeline would they now have to finish it? Is that something we have to worry about?
It would probably still be until December 31 of 2026, but the timeline they submitted, it would fall within that.
Okay.
The original concerns with that project was lack of prior approvals, and I definitely think that's a project that, we would just have to work with, if you want to fund it, we just have to work with the applicant to figure out what that looks like, because they are proposing an installation on the Ped Mall for like a full month. I'm just not sure that would get approved, but we could probably work something out with them somehow.
And it is something too where that's the installation, but there's also the photography aspect. And so as long as they were exhibiting the work in a public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could figure something out. It just might not look
The library,
exactly
do
like the
something at the senior
application
center.
you saw.
Right. And so am I interpreting this, so homage to public access, can we go ahead and give them funding for what they, give them the $1,000 they asked for with the understanding that they can now bring that back in? Is that possible?
Yeah, we'd just amend all of their funding agreements, so, we would make sure we still get the benefit we want out of it in order for them to receive their funds, so.
I would argue for keeping the cap where it is, funding additional projects or adding to ones that we didn't fully fund, but not going over the original limit. I just don't want to set the precedent that you can go over and then come back at the end of the year, or the hope that you might go over and come back at the end of the year. I don't know. I'm in favor of funding as many as possible, but I kind of want to leave, if we said 4 was the max, then 4 is the max.
Well, let's see where we're at, because if we do have enough, it would be nice to at least give Sarah that 900. Would it be 900? No, it would be half of that. It'd be 450. For the 8,900 total that she spent. Just because knowing that that it all got a lot different for her. But, and if we have the money, but, so what we're talking about now is adding, the, 3,000 for the Iowa Nice, so that would be 3,000, and then what are some of the other amounts that we could offer?
I guess the question I would have is that one that we would have fully funded? Right, I mean, we chose not to fund it in the initial rounds, to come back now and to fully fund it when, you know, arguably we underfunded some of these other projects. It seems,
Right, I don't
it seems a
remember
little
that
out of
being super
place
strong.
to, just because we have this funding available, that now somebody who didn't get funding initially, now we're going to fully fund what their ask was.
What else do we spend the money on then?
Well, we don't have to spend the money. I know, I mean, I see your point, Lauren, but also it's not, I mean, let's not spend it just to spend it either.
And to provide a little context to that, you know, like some of the things we have done this year, the Irving Weather Hello Lamppost project, the senior center improvements, those were paid for out of my economic development budget fund. So it's kind of like, you know, in general, I think we view our general fund budget as like a collective. And so, you know, those were examples where, knowing how tight our public art budget was, we pulled some from economic development to help support, you know, there's very similar goals. So it helps support that. So I think in general, when we want to do a cool project that's really impactful to the community, we're going to have that support behind us from leadership in the city manager's office. So I understand your desire to want to like get arts funding out the door. I agree, that's a great goal. And also I think, you know, we shouldn't feel like it's like a total loss if we don't spend all of our budget this year.
Here's a question actually on the senior center. So I know I think part of what we were doing with that space was also upgrading like the mounting system and the lighting. Mm-hmm. Is that something we've already sort of budgeted for, or is that something that could fall into this bucket?
Well, that was funds that I had set aside through the economic development fund, because knowing we usually didn't have as much available in the public art budget. But yeah, it won't happen probably for a while because they're working through interior renovations. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand this spreadsheet really. So
Sorry.
can you go all the way to the top?
Yes.
Just so I can see, okay.
Oops, I'm sorry.
So we've got, here's the score, total project cost, funds requested, funds awarded, got it. So we could add 450 to Sarah Alward's without going over either the $4,000 limit or the half of the total project cost.
You would go over they were awarded $4,000. Yeah.
But she's,
Right, and it's 3,200 that's different. So it would break that one ceiling.
so she spent 900 over her budget.
Right. So it would be compensating for her for half of that.
So that's the most we could is.
Well, I mean, really, she spent $3,200
Spent
over her budget.
32.
Right.
Right. I mean, she spent so the total project was actually $12,100.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So Lunar Horizon Moongate, let's see, that got also the full award. And then, but went 1,500 over. So if we compensated them for half of that 1,500, we'd be breaking the $4,000 ceiling. The homage to public access is already, that's the one where we're thinking about adding some funding for their archive project.
For what they
Yeah.
eliminated.
Right, which is preserving a record of it. If that's still possible, we could give them up to $1,000 more, still be under, well, actually, we could give them as much as $2,000 more and still be under, although it would.
Well, they only
that would be half.
requested.
They requested 3,000, so,
So we could
yeah.
give them $1,000 more. The open air media festival's done. What is with the corridor? There's nothing in the corridor ensemble budget that could be added back at this point, I'm assuming. Same probably with the Iowa City Dance and Historic.
Well, and there were reasons with, like, with the corridor ensemble, some of their venues weren't even, I think, in Iowa City, so there was a reason
Oh, I see.
we weren't funding the full amount.
And then the alfresco poetry 2026 total project cost. So the most we could ever have given them would be like $1,200, and we gave them 544.
They requested.
Oh, that's it. I don't know why I can't read a graph. And then, let's see. What is with the film scene request? What happened there? Like, that was an $11,000 ask. No, it was a $3,000 ask, and we didn't fund that.
It was actually Stephanie Miracle's project. It was, I think, at Film Scene, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Can't tell if it's completed or not, because there's nothing in that, but maybe it's a moot point.
Yeah, I didn't hear back from everyone I reached out to, so if it's missing information, that's why.
I think it would be great if we maybe tried to fund the Iowa Nice, which you pointed out, and then tried to do some additional funds to the public access and then to the mural for what we can within our matching.
and go over the 4,000. I mean,
Well, I don't know. You don't feel good with
I
that?
don't feel comfortable with that, but
Okay.
well, and I
just one
don't
of
know
us,
if I
so.
feel comfortable with funding projects we didn't fund before, because I think there was a reason.
We only didn't fund them because we didn't have enough money to fund everybody. Otherwise, we would have
Yeah.
funded everybody.
Yeah.
Well, there,
If we got the money now, let's spend it. Why not hold? Why are we holding back? This guy's got a lovely project. He had a very nice presentation too. We'll spend the money. What are we saving it for? Give me another example, I guess. If we're not going to spend it on this, what are we going to spend it on? That's why we all chose to meet
I
today.
do feel like we might have funded a little bit, but we didn't have time to talk about
Yeah.
small funding allotments because of the tornado siren. And so that's where I feel like this project maybe we hardly got to talk about it in the meeting.
Isn't the big reason we came in to meet today is to use this before the fiscal year ended too? So why
but
would we come
again,
in if we're not
Rachel's
gonna do
point is
stuff?
that it's all kind of the same pot. So it's, I mean,
We can do if someone wants to make a proposal, we can do that and we can vote and see where we're at.
I propose to fund or match the Iowa Nice photography project there with the $3,000.
Can we just do like one by one or?
Yeah, you can do it that way, or all as one if you feel like you. I guess it's up to you if you want. If there's not consensus and you feel like you need to take multiple votes, that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're not exceeding that budget, and we're going to match a project that we probably would have gotten to had we not had the constraints of the budget anyway. So
I'm ex officio.
it's only $3,000 in my scheme of this. $3,000 isn't anything. Let's do it. And then we're not exceeding the $4,000 that everybody's uncomfortable doing too. and we could see more art in our community.
Is there a second to that?
I almost want to see her application again, but
You want me to pull that up? Sorry. I can try to do that.
It is nice because that's an August, September project too. Like it's,
It's coming up.
yeah, it's already not, completed and,
Okay. Let me zoom in here. So here's kind of a description of the project. Photo installation in the Ped Mall to coincide with the Latino Festival. Using ice as a visual metaphor to experiment with ways of narrating the experiences, feelings, emotions of IO participants.
can we look at the budget too?
Yes.
That's helpful, just to.
Let's see. Look away if you get dizzy. Okay, so project funding sources, they had 2,000 committed from the Rapson Collaborative. Their total project, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Total project budget was, let's see, what does it say that? 7,000, and they requested 3.
And how are they doing their assessment? I think I'd like to see that also.
Like metric
They're,
of success.
yeah,
Let's see. People who visit and interact with the installation at the Ped Mall, the video installation uses QR codes, so they wanted to use the QR codes to provide data on how many visitors were accessing and engaging with the installation. Social media metrics were another one, visitor traffic, and then feedback from the community through social media, conversations, positive responses, that kind of thing.
well, I agree. It's a good project. I don't know how fair it is to fund them unless we consider everything over again, but I'm okay if
Well,
that's
we
the
are considering
consensus.
everything over again.
Okay.
If there's any you want to see, it's just,
Yeah.
it's also about, it's a little bit hard if something's been completed, I
Right.
think, in some ways, unless we have a clear understanding of how that might, where that funding would go. So this one is, I think, the ones that are either underway and, and still within our $4,000 ask, so. And so they're still struggling with,
Yeah, let me
in your
see,
notes.
see what they submitted. Oh, I thought they had submitted something else. Sorry, I don't remember where I was at. Yeah, they said they have secured funding, or the photography portion of the project is underway. So the portraits that they're highlighting through the installation, they're still in search of funding for the actual video installation
So this could
that
be-
they described.
This could be the solution to that problem, that the $3,000 if we were to award that now.
Based on their project budget, it probably, where everything is. Looks like the metal tower was 1,000, installation and permitting another 1,000.
it's an expensive project for what they're doing. So I just can't imagine that any artists who received funding would begrudge another artist getting funding for another project. I could be wrong. I don't know who shows up at these meetings, and sometimes maybe somebody has an axe to grind, but, this is a pretty nice community.
So there is a proposal and it would need a second. But we're going to go forward.
Is there a photograph of the art we could see on the proposal?
Yeah, let's see. Well, they don't have the installation. I think this is like an example of photography, but the structure, I think, needs to be fabricated if they were going to do it. But these are examples of.
But the missing square, that's just,
Sorry, that's not
just
loading.
the computer. Well, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if there was that added element of minimalism, it would be a lot going on there.
So one reason I joined the Public Art Committee is because public art so often lacks deeper meaning. And this is an art piece that I see that has deeper meaning, much more than a lot of the projects we have funded. So I want to put that out there too, especially in this time of the world.
Yeah.
So what are we holding back for? It's $3,000. It's chump change.
Does anyone feel comfortable seconding the proposal? And then
Who did you propose
can't.
it? Oh,
I proposed
you
it.
propose. Do you want to repeat that?
Yeah, I proposed funding the $3,000 of the Iowa Nice project of the grant matching proposal.
I second.
Okay. And so all those in favor,
Let's do a voice vote.
Aye.
do a voice?
Or you could do a call, because I'm just not sure. Do you want to call through each person?
Oh, aye.
Aye.
oh, I guess I'll say aye.
Aye.
Steph?
Yep.
Aye.
Okay, so.
Aye.
So that movement passes. So that's 3,000 gone. So now we still have,
And we're setting aside 1,500, right?
we have that option, yes.
I'm going to propose before we get further
Yeah.
on the list that we set aside 1,500 for the restoration project.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, do we want to?
Aye.
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 So
Aye.
that motion passes.
So now we have 3,500 to consider.
Now we have 3,500. It's just so helpful, to break it down for me, that I get kind of, because $3,000 is a lot of money for me.
It makes a big deal. That's a huge
In the world of
difference for
public art, it's
artists.
nothing.
In my little world. Okay, so are there any others that we're discussing? Does anyone want to make any proposals about any of the other ones? I think it's very helpful to me, as I've been kind of unpacking this graph, to read the column V to understand what's going on. And so some of the ones that have had to maybe, that we did not make a full commitment to, and definitely we did not make a full commitment to those in the interest of funding more. So if we can turn that, address that and turn that around, I think that's actually a good thing. Especially where, and just the homage to public access where they're saying we had to scale back. And what they are talking about could be additive because video editing and archive storage are costs that could be added, in my humble opinion. So either someone should make a proposal to do further funding, or we can move on? How are people feeling?
For the Rita Dove plaque, so that we're probably going to need $1,000 for concrete for that.
Okay, so that's 20, so now we're at 2,500.
Yeah, and we have not, we need supplies for the bronze sculptures too, which we still don't know that total cost, but we thought it would be less than 1,000 for sure,
Okay,
but something.
but we can reserve funding for that?
I mean, you can do that in next year's budget, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, because my understanding was that we couldn't, without knowing, without being, like we know that we need $1,000 and
Yeah.
we couldn't carry it over.
Those are two things that we already have under contract, so we could. That's kind of the line.
Okay.
Yeah, something already encumbered.
Okay. That's helpful.
I guess I would propose funding those two restoration things as well. I'm just looking down the list, and I do see the point about adding on the two things that I would say is anything over the 4,000 I don't want to support, just knowing
Right.
we gave it a lid, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's fair to everyone to stick with the original terms of the grant. And then there's a couple on here we partially funded because of concerns that I still have. So just looking at, what's left in process of elimination, I guess. I'd shift toward the restoration projects,
Okay.
which if that's that which still has there's still 1,500 left then to look at. But I'd prioritize those over some of these ones that we chose not to fund in the first place.
So do we need to vote on those?
No.
Or we can just, okay, so we still have about $1,500.
The homage to public access, but that's the one with the archive component, right? That is unfunded, that would allow them to create a video record and save it of the work.
And that one, I'm fine with adding funding. That was one I think that was more of a spread the love situation than a we have concerns.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with adding to that one.
That seems like
Yeah.
Do you want to make a proposal?
I can't
I
propose.
can propose that we give them $1,000,
So that we increase the award from the,
2,000 to the 3,000
request
that they asked.
originally made. That's kind of nice too.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so, and are there any others that are standing out to people? We have $500, so is there any further ones when we look at, the funding that we've allocated? And I would say the Family Folk Machine, no, because they did not respond to updating their information, so it's, that one would be no. We also don't have information on the Fakers Club, so I would take that off the table. We fully funded the requests for number 7 and number 8.
Can you scroll down one more
Sorry,
time?
yes.
Just adding it up, we put 3,500 toward increased restoration costs. We put 4,000 towards additional grants. So we only have 500 left, and maybe
Right.
that's our buffer.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we've split it pretty evenly between additional grants and additional restoration, which I feel good about.
Oh, so you're saying just leave it as?
Yeah,
I would just leave it.
agree.
We're getting close to the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone feel okay with that? All right, so should we move on to our next?
Sure.
Okay. The next agenda item was the draft strategic plan. So we had decided that every year, a year out from when we adopted our strategic plan, we'd do an annual report, which we will submit to the city council. So I included a draft in your packet. It's really more about the contents more than the design. It still needs to go to the communications office for final design. But wanted to take any feedback about anything you thought was missing, should be enhanced, included, excluded, really any comments you have at all. Ultimately, we'd want to approve a final version, which would ultimately be submitted to City Council so they can get a sense of all the good work you're doing.
I think it looks really good, and this is just, you did this.
Yeah,
Looks really nice. And you're like, it has to go to the design. I'm like, it's designed to me.
I mean, just in a like very minor call out, but the public art matching grant, we've now funded 8 projects instead of 7.
Yep, that's a good note.
It's great.
Yeah, that's right. Staff, good job.
Picture of her working.
People really like this mural.
They love
It's
it.
a great location.
It is.
It's a location would never occur to
Unexpected.
me.
Yeah.
It completely changes that space.
Yeah, the one in Riverfront Crossings looks really, really good too.
It does.
Better picture of that.
It looks terrific.
It was an unpopular shade of yellow before.
Yeah. It's for
Gotten a lot of
Was it? That's
positive
interesting.
commentary on this one. Yeah.
that area is looking so good with the trees and the.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get the new sculptures in later
Yep.
this year too. Okay, well, hopefully you all, if you haven't had a chance, please look through and you can submit any comments you have to me. Otherwise, we'll forward it on to the communications division and then get it submitted to a city council through one of their upcoming information packets. But you all should be really proud of all the we've accomplished in the last year. It's a lot for the size of staff and funding that we have. So
Well, I
it's
want to
great.
thank you for that.
Yes.
You've done a great job following through and following up, and the map is so exciting, and the lamppost, and it's going to be really great once that, if we can coordinate that in with the university and make them aware of it, and even maybe have them participate, because it would just be so great for visitors to Iowa City to have that easy access. And because I know there's public art like on the university campus, and I've seen it, and I can't remember where it is. It's like there's some really nice pieces. I'm like, where is that one? So it's really nice to have this. So thank you so much for all your work on all that.
For sure. It's definitely a team effort. Going back to our last conversation, Public Works has done a lot to make some of these projects happen, and, they rarely charge us for that either. So it's definitely a team effort.
Great. Yeah, and I think your design looks good. So. Yeah. Okay, so do we need to look at the strategic plan some more?
If you guys are done with it, then it's good.
I thought it looked good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a motion to approve it and forward it on to City Council.
Motion to approve.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
That's great. Any updates?
I don't think I have any. We launched the Hello Lamppost project, so I haven't had a chance to see what those results or engagement numbers look like yet, but I can bring those maybe to our next meeting. We'll have a little bit longer of a use period to look at. And got all the agreements sent out to those who were selected for the sculptor showcase, so they've returned those, and now we just have to start the shuffling for or the scheduling. It's a little tricky with trying to get people, especially because we have people who are coming to remove sculptures in some locations and reinstall in another. Trying to time everything up that the pad is open when you need it to be installed is a little tricky. So there is one or two that I may ask you if we could move them to a different location, because it would be easier for the artists scheduling. So I'll send that via email if that happens, but it's always a puzzle to try to get those to work.
And I think most of it, there's a lot of flexibility. The only pieces that seemed was the red one that we want to make sure it's sort of in a safer location. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it seems like they are pretty
Okay.
around a little bit. I have one thought that I wanted to just sort of bring to the committee very quickly, but I participate, and I've done this in this in Chicago, there's this mural project. It's called Artists of the Wall. And it's a huge thing. It's done by the Lincoln Park area, but artists and people from the community really pay $35, and there's this long beachfront bench that they divide into about 4-foot increments, and there's like 169. So this really runs quite a length of the lakefront, and every year people go and do murals, and there's a theme. And they began it, and it's in its 33rd year, but they began it as a fundraiser, but also to prevent graffiti. And so I just, and it was just so much, it's so much fun. It's it's everyone from all walks of life. There's definitely artists there, and there's definitely non-artists there. and it's just, and then there's the food trucks, and there's music, and it's only like $35, and they have it really organized where, they have these big gallons of paint where they use the soups, and they put it in the little coffee trays and little cups, and you can just go and you ask for your colors, and they give you brushes. But of course there's like just the ringers, the people that know to bring a roller and have all their brushes. And we used tons of brushes when we did ours, and brought our own. But it was just so fun. And I thought, I wonder if there's a place in Iowa City that would have some kind of like just an anti-graffiti effort and also a community building effort. And so I just wanted to put that out as a point of conversation at some point to think about, because, and it could even be something with the downtown district. It could become parts of the whole art fest. It could have a place, but it's just so fun to do.
Yeah.
And,
What areas in town get hit by graffiti? I'm trying to think.
mostly the alleys.
I don't know
the
about
alleys are,
graffiti,
like,
but the
densely-
basically behind the new mural in the parking garage, just the long walkway of cement, and the emergency exit door on the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that could be a pretty cool
That would be kind of
360 kind of gallery.
Yeah.
'Cause right now it's just kind of a concrete tunnel. I don't know if the university's open to that, but that could be kind of a cool, like, if people were doing it during Arts Fests right there,
Yeah.
like accessible, make it a gallery instead of a weird tunnel.
It's a really good idea. I think that, like, the university, one thing that I've encountered a lot is like they want everything to be pre-approved. There's no like extemporizing, So I think like part of the fun of what you're what you're describing is that people can go and do.
Oh yeah, they just go and do,
Yeah.
and it's it was so fun. It was great, it's-
The university would want to design ahead of time. I thought the same thing. I thought of like the walkways around, like down by the Iowa River. There are those pass-throughs that always smell like pee. And they're like anything that we could do to stop people from viewing them as outdoor toilets would be awesome. Oh God, I'm doing all of this on public access TV, sorry. But, and then I was like, okay, but like the Office of Strategic Communication will have to approve every single one of those designs. Still, I think there's still like that, it's a great idea. And it would just be something a little bit different from what you're describing.
Yeah, no, but they come up with a theme, and it's always, it's usually something very community oriented. Like this is We Are All Neighbors. Last year was All Together, so it's always something positive. And I'm sure if anyone did something inappropriate, it would be taken out, but I didn't see any, I walked around and it was just super fun.
That's cool.
I'm going to go look at that parking garage space now.
But just something to think about, and maybe to talk to people in the city if there are certain areas that would benefit from something like that. I just think it could be really fun. And I know Steph also had some ideas about, do you want to talk a little bit about that, Steph? Is this kind of a good point, whereas we enter into our new year, kind of?
Yeah. So Anita, and well, I guess I also spoke with Rachel, but circling back on my idea from a few months ago. Oh, am I still on?
Yeah, you're on
Did
here.
I turn off? Okay. Turned off my earbud. Sorry. Yeah, the idea of, is there a way to do a like kind of community programming to like have artists pitch ideas to a community and the community vote on it. So I brought up the micro grant dinner in Des Moines that I'd participated in with the Des Moines Arts Festival group. And I'm curious if anybody on the committee would be interested in kind of Anita and I were kicking around the idea of, is it possible as the Public Art Committee to kind of bring a structure to a local, or I guess introduce a structure that local organizations could apply to bring to their organizations, and we would fund them to be the hosts, and then they would use some of the funding to also then support the projects that are voted upon. And so it becomes a way for bringing kind of community engagement with the artists and the artists pitching their work to the community. Just kind of another way of, bringing some of that outside of this room, but kind of to the residents and citizens.
And so that it would be sort of more of a micro grant, like $500 grants that would happen a couple times during the year. Because we've run into that with the matching grants that there's just, the project is already done. We can't fund it, right? Like we've run into that before, just so there would be more of small money funding available. It's just some things to think about, and talking to other artists in the community that might be interested in doing these things, because PS1 used to do that. They used to be called soups, and they would be everyone would pay like $10, and you would get a soup dinner, and $5 would go to the people hosting and making the soup, and then $5 would go to the artist. And so, so usually those were like micro grants of like $250 or, whatever. But it was just really fun to hear people's ideas. And I will say, and Steph also said that she had this experience in Des Moines, because these are small grants, $250, that people would come to these and not be, artists, but they would fund the other grant. They'd say, well, I'm going to fund that project. I'll fund that project. It's like, so it just became a really very inclusive, very engaged activity. And so, so I think those are some really kind of interesting ideas. I mean, something like that could be possible at the senior center, or, something to think about, like, how could we do that without, getting, and not do the whole soup thing, but just to do sort of this idea of the micro grant and pitching that. So just some thoughts to think about.
I love the idea of a paint this bike underpass contest. There's the Longfellow Tunnel one that the middle school does, but like we have an increasing amount of nice bike trails with an increasing amount of tunnels. And it'd be cool to like go see all the paintings instead of, go through all the tunnels. But
That
a
would
great
be
idea.
really
Yeah.
fun to do. Yeah, we could have a series. But some of them have that anti-graffiti paint that you can't
Oh, that's
do murals
interesting.
on. But that could be interesting. Yeah, so just some, because we can also generate new things. I think that's an exciting opportunity for us to think about. We have our main things, but and we've made such a great commitment to the restoration projects, but we've gotten over the emergency restorations, which is so great. And so now we can we'll have a little bit more leeway, which will be nice. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts?
I guess not on that, but back to the sculpture walk, I had emailed like 20 to 30 people, and a lot of the folks have moved out of state, or that had gotten back to me, didn't have any work that was going to be prepared in time for the sculpture walk. So I was just something to consider, I guess, when we're putting those calls out. A lot of the calls were for folks that had pre-existing sculptures. They just needed a home, basically. So, I guess I'm new to all this too, so I'm not sure all the timing and all that. But if just some way possible to get the word out sooner to folks, so they could maybe make work for that upcoming show. Because it seemed like the folks that did apply had just existing things, and it's like, here's an opportunity to show it, as opposed to having a brand new piece made for the walk. Because that kind of changes the whole proposal situation and all that too. But then you have proposals for new works as opposed to here's a bunch of existing works that just need a pad to go on. But then that gives people time to create that work because it's a longer process to make those bigger outdoor pieces. Because I hit up a lot of the colleges and they forwarded me their emails to other folks, and I reached out to them, and a lot of them didn't make work that was for outdoor purposes like that too. So it's a very small community that's making work for that purpose. So I think if we could just try to reach out and catch a larger audience, again, I'm not sure the best way to do that, but I think that's kind of why we keep running into the same problem is that there's only 10 in the state that are kind of operating that way anyway. So.
And I think we can just try to do a little bit more word of mouth, like starting, in this coming spring.
Yeah, like I've got a buddy I was telling about, and
Yeah.
he's ramping up to make something. But that being said, it's a whole process. So, just the way the grant works, it's more back funding what they've already spent money on rather than funding a brand new project. So that just limits the amount of artists that I think that are applying.
Yeah, I also want to reach out and talk to Dubuque, because they have a very different,
Yeah,
but a
that's kinda what I
really
was
good,
thinking of.
they get a lot of applicants, and
I think they have different guidelines though, as opposed to
they're regional.
Exactly. So it changes the.
Right, but I still
whole,
think it's
so-
worth having a really
Yeah.
good conversation. I think we could get, I once met the woman, I think it's
Jenny.
Jenny, yeah, and just to meet with her and just talk to her.
Yeah, definitely
would
just see
be
how they're
really-
doing it because
Yeah.
I'd just like to understand how they're getting all those nice pieces basically. So.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that emailed me back said they'd moved out of state, they'd gone to school here, then they'd moved out. So yeah, just a lot of, because of those guidelines that people get
I just
kind of
really
pushed out
want,
from that.
like
but-
Ames, I want to get on their radar with
Yeah.
this, because,
Yeah, because I had emailed the whole crew over there, but no one responded. So that's
yeah.
how it goes.
Well, it's also just hard to do it at the end of the year, and so that's sort of a mental note for myself. I don't think I started early enough trying to recruit and get people excited about it.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's just like an ongoing conversation, I guess, as opposed to so close to when it comes up. Maybe we could drum up some more business, so to speak, and keep more people aware and kind of eager to apply to that next one, as opposed to, I feel like it kind of came up on everybody's heels real quick, as opposed to having this date to look forward to.
Yeah, so we should start, maybe even put in advertisements a year in advance.
Yeah, or like as we're, this current one's on show, be like, here's how you get involved, and maybe get some more folks that way.
Right.
Because I'm not sure everybody knows how accessible it is, in a sense, because,
Yeah.
it is pretty easy to apply and
Yeah.
potentially make the cut, so.
Could we have a QR code on the labeling for
Like
the
here's, you
pieces?
propose something.
We do. Yeah.
Could we link it to, like, you could,
Yeah, we can add a little bit more information
that?
about.
your work here, or what is
How
it?
the
They
food-
always say, like, you could live here, like on the hot side of the
you lived
highway.
here,
If
you'd
you
be
lived
home.
here, you'd be home, right?
Yeah.
If you applied, your sculpture
This
would
could be
here.
your art.
Yeah.
That would be great, yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of people were interested, but I just didn't think they had the time to actually get anything
Oh,
presented in a meaningful way and at that scale,
It takes a
So,
year,
yeah.
that's at least.
How long has this opportunity existed? How many years?
Maybe 6 or 7,
a good long
something like
while.
that.
It's like, it needs to get into people's heads that there's a rhythm to it, but I think you're
But
right.
and it was
advertising
annual,
earlier.
and then we went to every other year.
Yeah, maybe that was when it kind of dropped off people's radars. It used to be back when I was an art student, there would be, in a totally analog world, that there were these books, like grants and opportunities for artists, and you would just like apply for all of them, But now I think, I don't know that those books are still being made. I'm sure they're not.
It's called Instagram.
Yeah, right. It's social media for everything.
Yeah, I think it's going to look really good, though. I'm excited about it. And I do, like, there's other things, too, that we could think about is involving other artists and other art forms just, how do we get poets, could we commission a poet to, would that be of interest, to the city and to the community to have somebody responding to these sculptures even? It could be kind of a fun, interesting thing to think about.
That'd be good for a micro grant
Yes,
right there.
yeah. Well, it's just, that the arts aren't just, sculpture and murals, so that it can be even more encompassing and dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone else have anything to add, or anyone want to make a movement? Adjourn,
Motion to adjourn?
hang out?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Steph? Yes?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
That was
Nice
great.
to see
Thank you,
That was a
Steph.
very good meeting.